Alf, and Joanne online. Confirmed. We have not got Councilor Rudd. So was he contacting us that you're aware of, or were we calling him? Yes, we can hear you fine, Councilor Sorensen. Thank you. Any word from Councilor Rudd at all? I believe he was supposed to be online, as was the plan, right? But okay. Okay, so it would have been up to him to be online his end. Okay, all right, perfect, thank you. All right, thank you. And just to confirm, we do have Councilor Sorensen online with us today. And as yet, we do not have Councilor Rudd. He may be coming, but he's not present at this meeting today regardless. All right, with that, I will call the meeting to order. And, welcome to the Taber Town Council meeting for February 28th, 2022. I'll call the meeting to order. We have no public hearings. I would ask for your adoption of the agenda as presented, please. Councilor Bruin?
I can make that motion, Mr. Mayor. We adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Councilor Sorensen? We lost her. Councilor Sorensen? Councilor Sorensen? I was just asking if anybody else did. Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item number 4, adoption of minutes. Item 4.1, minutes of regular meeting of council February 14th, 2022. Mr. Thibault?
Just the regular minutes before you for approval.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on February 14th, 2022 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Thibault?
Just to let you know, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Rudd is online. He's just been muted.
Oh, yes. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Welcome, Councillor Rudd, as well. And moving on to item number 5, business arising. Item 5.1, recording of resolutions resulting from closed session portion of council meetings. Mr. Thibault.
The recording resolutions was brought up by council last time. The administration has put this information together, has some options for what we can do for looking after recording at the end, and I think it was Al going to present on that. Just a note for Councillor Sorensen, we would need to hear a yes or an affirmation, as we can't see you through our screens because we have the council agenda up there. Please and thank you.
So just to clarify, we'll just need them to say in favor or opposed, so we can do that for the minutes.
Correct, yeah, because we can't see her, so we need to hear her.
All right. Councillor Sorensen, Councillor Rudd, did you hear Mr. Thibault's explanation there? All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd? He's muted. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Moving along. Al, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Worship.
Good afternoon.
Member of Council. So let me explain to you how the system works in the chamber first. So when we start the live streaming, the audio and the video feeds move from here to YouTube. There is a 10 to 15 seconds lag in between. So we catch up on that. And once we put the system on mute, what it makes, it just puts that conversation inside this room. It doesn't travel anywhere to guarantee the privacy for council during closed session. So when we go on break or closed session, we put the system in mute so public cannot hear what's happening in the room. So on GoToMeeting, Zoom, or any kind of platform, it has no audio when we are muted, and the video feed is just a black screen. The YouTube, the system gives us the option to have a background image on YouTube. So we display to public what's happening instead of a black screen. So it's only one picture. We can upload it to the system before the meeting. And when we go to mute, it just displays that on YouTube. So administration drafted a new message for public, for council consideration. We would appreciate council feedback on that to replace the existing one. So if we continue the live streaming during closed session, we would lose the capability for conference calls because, again, we have to put the system on mute, so no feed will go through to YouTube or Zoom or any kind of platform. So we wanted to bring that out to council attention that we would lose that ability during closed session if we continue the live streaming. The only option, there is an option, the only option would be going back to the old days when we had a cell phone, we call the person from a cell phone, and we just hope for the best that they can hear, both parties can hear each other. The only problem with that, if council owns a cell phone, the feed coming from the cell phone is not going to public unless his worship has to point the phone to the microphone so public can hear what's happening from the phone. So we wanted to bring that to council attention if we continue the live streaming. And we also added in the package for council a report from YouTube. It displays how many views we have for each meeting and the average time for each meeting. So usually it's between 5 to 10 minutes. That's what public usually watch. That's the average time. So that's again for council consideration. And the last point, it's the overtime. If we continue the live streaming and someone from IT has to stay here during closed session, that's more overtime that we never budgeted for. Of course, Mr. Orwa can speak better than me about wages budget, but we never included it in the budget. So we recommended few options for council considerations, and if you have any questions, we are happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Al, any questions for Al? Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the way we do it now, what are your suggestions to change it? Because really, if you could put closed session like you showed on the screen there and carry, because you have to have that screen showing as long as we're in closed session. So you have a blank screen for however minutes we're in closed. And then, so what you're suggesting is maybe just record the motions and print it or make it public the next day instead of leaving the camera on throughout it all.
That's exactly what we're recommending. So Mr. Thibault would record the open session after closed session, then we add it to YouTube for in the next day or two.
I like that idea. I know, like I've watched some of the meetings afterwards and everyone thinks it's over until you fast forward to the very end of the meeting, you're not aware that it actually does come back live. So I like that idea. Just, you know, if we're closed, if we're done before 5 o'clock or overtime kicks in, perhaps we can keep it running. But if after 5 we go into overtime, then I think it'd be warranted to just make the motions public in our media the next day or something.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, does the feed come back when we come out of closed session?
So right now, because we don't go through closed session, actually, sometimes when we have a break between before delegation, and we go to closed session, so we have to mute the system so it doesn't go anywhere. It stays in the room. Right. So it will be a problem if we have member of council remotely signed in, they cannot really listen or hear anything.
Right, but if the agenda goes as it normally would and the closed session would be at the end, it doesn't come back and record the motions that are made after we come back into open session. Is that correct?
So currently, because we don't go through it in closed session, nothing happens. What we are recommending is Mr. Thibault, after closed session, when we go back to open session, he would record the open session again.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you put on the screen the little report, council live stream is going to be back, whatever it says? Can you put that on there? So I got a question about that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's it. Now, it says there, the last sentence, it will be available on our channel following the meeting. I am to understand that it's actually the next day, correct? Or, so that should be clarified, I think, Mr. Mayor, if I may, that it would be tomorrow morning or next morning, or rather than people saying, oh, I better wait after the meeting, I can look at it, but that's not quite true because it's the next day, correct?
Correct. It takes some time, and if there is two options on YouTube, we either upload it as a separate item, which takes almost no time, like few minutes, and it will be uploaded. But if we want to merge it with the existing meeting, that will take hours. It takes like 6 to 7 hours to add it to the existing meeting and upload it as one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Sorensen? Councillor Rudd?
To say that I'd be in favor of just continuing the streaming and just add it to the open session afterwards. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd? Councillor Rudd, I believe you're muted. Yes, we can now, yes. All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right.
I move that council directs administration to implement solution number 1 for the recording of future council meetings, which consists of an edited still image while not live streaming, and resolutions resulting from closed sessions being recorded but not live streamed.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Bruin?
Should we add to that perhaps available the next day in your motion?
I don't know that we can clarify it is next. Did you see maybe 2 days, Al? That was
I would recommend 2 days.
2 days. Okay.
Friendly amendment.
For 2 days?
Yes, within 2 days.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll accept the friendly amendment.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table with the friendly amendment as accepted. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. Thank you, Al. All right, on to item 5.2, downtown sidewalk improvements. Mr. Tebow.
This was before council previously. Gary's got himself queued up and come back with some additional information
All
for
right,
council.
thank you, Mr. Scheer.
Yes, thank you. So from our past meeting, we talked about sidewalks, colored sidewalks, paving stone. This is more on the 49th Avenue, not 48th Avenue. Well, I'll come back for 48th Avenue. So really, this is just going to be part of our capital projects for this coming year. So in front of MCC, we would like to replace the paving stone. As you can see, it's in bad shape. It's about 110 square meters. We're recommending just normal concrete because that's all there is around there is normal concrete. It's stronger, it's more resistant to the frost heaves, things like that. If we could show some of the pictures. So this is the actual, that's what it looks like. It's spalling all over the place. It's coming apart. And the next one is, next one, please. This is the length of it. You can see it's about 150 feet long, 53 meters roughly. And we're just proposing normal concrete, but I mean, that's up to council if they want to have colored concrete or replace it with paving stone. So we're just looking for council's input on this. And I'm not coming for money. We already have the money in the capital budget. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scheer. Any questions, comments? Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'd be in favor of just the normal concrete brush, normal concrete. As we discussed before, the colored concrete would be very nice, but to match the colors, say in a year or two, it's almost impossible to get the same match and they fade differently over time. So personally, I would be in favor of just regular brush concrete.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council directs administration to replace the paving stones in front of the businesses on 49th Avenue with normal concrete with fiber reinforcement.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Rudd? All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. On to item 6, bylaws, item 6.1, proposed investment incentive bylaw. Mr. Tebow.
Administration was asked by council to come up with an incentive bylaw to help for economic development. Mr. Chris Egan will present the bylaw. This is a new bylaw, and we are just looking for first reading at this point. Administration acknowledges that there's some formatting and other things that do need to take place.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council.
Good afternoon.
So at the end of 2021, administration was in discussions with a processor looking to locate in southern Alberta. Although Tabor was in the top 3 locations, the town was ultimately not selected. During the debriefing discussions with that processor, they suggested that the town implement an investment incentive similar to the cities of Lethbridge and Medicine Hat. As requested by council, administration has investigated the incentive programs offered by the 2 cities and 8 other communities comparable to Tabor, and has prepared the tax incentive bylaw for council considerations. The main points proposed in the incentive include a tiered incentive available to new builds and expansions of existing businesses. The proposed incentives waives property taxes completely for the first 2 years, followed by following occupancy of the new development, with the 3rd to 5th years seeing a gradual increase or decrease in the proportion of tax, ending in year 6 when the business would return to paying full value of the municipal taxes. The incentive only applies to the municipal portion of tax and does not apply to schools, senior, or machinery equipment taxes. The bylaw establishes administrative processes, and the bylaw also sets conditions for the incentive to be canceled if businesses fail to comply with the incentive agreement or fails to substantially complete development within 2 years of the development permit being issued. Administration presents the bylaw for discussion and potential first reading.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Mr. Egan. So I would be curious, how does this proposed bylaw compare with the incentives that our direct competitors, so Lethbridge, Coaldale, Medicine Hat, how does this compare to their incentives?
So the incentives provided by the 10 communities we studied fall into 2 basic categories. Most of them provide a tiered progression, returning to full municipal taxes at some point in time. The values and the timing vary slightly. And then the second group provides complete waivers for a period of 3 to 5 years, and not the tiered approach. Generally, what we're proposing today is a blend, and probably an average or the median of what is proposed by communities that would be similar to us in size and scope.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. I just have a question. Do you think that this incentive will draw business? Like, is it a big enough incentive that it will actually make a difference?
I do. We're becoming competitive with similar communities and in the area and in our jurisdiction. And so that will allow the natural advantages that Tabor would have in certain circumstances to be considered on and above and not be diminished by the incentives of other communities, the financial.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a good plan. I have a question. In the fifth year of the development, 25% of municipal taxes would be exempt. So the sixth year then it'd be back to full taxes. My thoughts on this is if there's nothing built there, we collect nothing. If we can encourage people to build, and by, if it delays the taxes for a bit, it'll eventually come back to us. And anything we can do to encourage business to come to town, I think it's good. So I would be in favor of going through with this, and I'd be prepared to make that motion.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
That council gives first reading to investment incentive bylaw number 1-2022.
Right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Egan. Would this then be offered to all new investments coming our way, or would it be as a request of the prospective investor? How are you going to handle that? I mean, if everybody gets it, or just those who ask for it? That's what I'm trying to say.
So everyone is eligible to ask, but they must ask. So there's an administrative process set out in the bylaw that they make the request through administration, and then it's considered by council, and the council makes the decision whether it's adopted or not.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah,
just 1 second. Councillor Beckering, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. As a follow-up, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a follow-up, then everybody would get it, right? I mean, it seems to me that if you qualify under their criteria, and because it's public, everybody would get it. Isn't that basically what it says?
I think generally, yes, your statement is correct. Council still reserves the right, of course, to say no to anyone that they wish. That's allowed for in the bylaw.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
I was just wondering if the town can provide some more information in regards to the criteria. I'd like a bit more information in that. And my understanding is it's not only new businesses, but existing businesses that want to add on to their business or to expand. So I'd like some more information on that.
All right, thank you. You want to respond to that? Sure.
Certainly,
Absolutely.
we can provide additional information, and then prior to second and third reading.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Thibault?
Just to speak to Councillor Sorensen's question a little bit, there is the ability, and there might be some criteria around it, but there is the ability for businesses who are expanding, if they meet that criteria, to also apply for this tax incentive opportunity. So again, there's some criteria to it, but existing businesses who are creating something new can actually apply.
All right, thank you. What Councillor Sorensen was asking, and that's reasonable to have back for the next meeting with some more information in that regard. All right, thank you. All right, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Rudd? All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. On to item 6.2, proposed council code of conduct. Mr. Thibault.
So this came out of a council request, again, at a previous meeting, and Ms. Van Ham is able to field any questions and provide information for you.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising from Ms. Van Ham? None whatsoever. Councillor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council gives first reading to council code of conduct bylaw 3-2022.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Rudd? Councillor Rudd?
I think we're just having trouble with audio, so it's hard for us to hear.
All right, well, that one is carried anyway. Councilor Rudd, did you hear us? All right, Councilor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make the second
All
recorded
right.
motion. I move that council give second reading to Council Code of Conduct Bylaw 3-2022.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. And someone prepared to make the third required motion. Councilor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council unanimously agrees to proceed to third and final reading of Council Code of Conduct Bylaw 3-2022.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Someone prepared to make the fourth motion. Councilor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll join the party. The council gives third and final reading to Council Code of Conduct Bylaw 3-2022.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now. So great. Thank you. On to item 7, action item 7.1, Wastewater Lagoon Solar Project. Mr. Thibault.
Our energy manager, Blake, is going to come up and provide some information and answer questions.
All right, thank you. Blake, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council.
Good afternoon.
In regards to Resolution 451/2021 from the October 12th, 2021 Council meeting, Council made the motion to direct administration to add the aerated Lagoon solar site solar PV system to the 2021 capital budget, and Council agreed to fund the engineering services for the aerated site solar PV system project in the amount of $50,000 with funds to come from the Energy Conservation Fund. I'd like to provide some background on the project for those new to Council. The proposed solar project is a ground-mounted solar farm with 2,400 panels located east of the existing wastewater lagoons on undeveloped natural prairie land. The total nameplate capacity of the system is 1.08 megawatts DC. The system was designed to offset the total yearly power consumption of the wastewater lagoons and irrigation pump house. Administration, with the help from MPE Engineering, issued a request for proposal for design, build, and tendered bids. We received 11 bids total for supply, installation, and commissioning of the solar system. Pricing was very competitive, with the lowest bid coming in at $1.398 million, which is about $450,000 less than our budgetary estimate provided to Council in October. During the October Council meeting, administration noted the Alberta Municipal Solar Program for grant funding. Unfortunately, the program reached full subscription and grant funding is no longer available. The grant facilitator did note that future funding may be available and that they would strongly consider retroactively partnering with Tabor on the project. At this time, there are currently no provincial funding streams available to partner on the project. Provided in the council package was 2 economic models for the project. One was for if we use the full $100,000 contingency during construction, and one if we don't use the contingency. If we exhaust the full contingency, Tabor would owe roughly $30,575 year 1 to 15, with total savings of about $2.2 million year 16 to year 30. If we don't use the contingency, the system will pay for itself with $91,000 generated year 1 to 15, with a total savings of $2.3 million year 16 to year 30. The added benefit of Tabor funding the project is that we get to keep the carbon credits generated from the system. We know that Tabor can generate up to $27,000 worth of revenue for the first 8 years of the project from the carbon credits. We don't fully know the impact of retaining the carbon credits for the lifespan of the system, but they will be a valuable asset to Tabor as the federal government continues to ratchet up carbon pricing. I spoke to both the CAO of Raymond and CAO of Cardston last week regarding their solar projects, and I asked them the question of if they could go back in time with what they know now, what would they do differently? Both CAOs said their biggest regret was giving the provincial government the solar credits from their systems as part of the Alberta Municipal Solar Grant funding. Therefore, with the system paying itself off or owing just over $30,000 over the course of the debenture, while Tabor retaining the carbon credits, administration recommends proceeding with the Wastewater Solar Lagoon project. Based on the evaluation of bidders, it is MPE's Engineering's recommendation that the work be awarded to MI Energy Inc. in the amount of $1.398 million excluding GST. Do you guys have any questions?
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Blake. What is your feeling regarding the facilitator of the Alberta Municipal Solar Program saying to you that it could become, could be qualified retroactive if there's, what is your gut feeling on that?
So I did talk to them over email and in person, and this program was so successful that they are actively lobbying the government for more funding. Currently, we're at the top of the list when it comes to if potential funding is released again, that we would be kind of first across the line to receive that funding. But I think what council should consider is the impact of these carbon credits. Like I said, with Raymond and Cardston, they both indicated that they would have funded these projects themselves to keep those carbon credits. And that was their if they could do it over again moment that they conveyed to me. So I think there's a good chance we could see funding, but we would have to have that discussion if we want to accept that offset upfront cost versus what we can gain over the 30 years with those carbon credits. So,
yeah. All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about the phone. How many acres is this solar panel going to cover?
I think it was about 120 meters by 120 meters.
So it's 4 acres at the most, maybe.
Something like that, yeah. I didn't do the conversion to acres. Sorry.
A question maybe perhaps to Gary. There's how many acres total of that grassland do we have there? Will this ever interfere if we want to perhaps develop more irrigation with a pivot for wastewater?
No, this is right beside the irrigation buildings. Currently, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's just prairie is all it is. So it's not with irrigated acres at all.
It's nothing that we one time want to. The other question I had, the irrigation pump house, you said it helps subsidize that.
Yeah.
Is that a bill that we pay or the renter pays now? The pump house, is that for the pivots or?
Yes, yeah, that's Pivot Pump House.
So currently, because we renegotiated that list, that it comes out of their leasing.
So they're paying for the power they
So
acquire?
you will gain some money on that too.
Okay, that was my question, because we're not subsidizing those pump
No, you're not
houses for the
subsidizing.
renter.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Councillor Bruin actually asked the question I was going to ask.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Mr. Orwa, since he's an expert in the game of money, does this make financial sense, sir?
Does it make sense? I think that was the question. I think looking at it from a revenue standpoint, I would say it's a good revenue stream. But I think the town can only realize that in the long run after paying the debenture. But in the short run, you might not see what it is, but I believe it will be a good revenue stream in the long run once the debenture is paid. Because in the short term, remember, if council decides to go with the debenture to fund it, we'll have to service the debt. But eventually, as Blake said, I think he said in the next 15 years, correct? So in the long run, it will be a good revenue stream for the town. Alongside those lines would make sense to me.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
Just a follow-up to John's answer there. So in the long run, is 15 years before we see return from this, or when will we start seeing actual return?
Yes, so the system will pay itself off over the first 15 years, and the second 15 years is where we really start to see that generated savings revenue.
So it's a 15-year that we'll be losing, well, not losing, but putting the money towards payment.
Basically, call it cutting even at this point.
What concerns me after 15 years that these will be outdated and the technology is going to outgrow them so fast that they won't be as efficient as we could be. Is there any plan, like upgrades or anything?
Yeah, so the panels themselves will degrade slowly over time. That's just the way the technology works. The inverters themselves will fail. So we've actually budgeted in a one-time payment of one-time operational cost of $150,000 for the full inverter replacements. That's earmarked for year 21. So we do know that that's going to happen, and that's going to be the point of failure there. As for the panels themselves, even after 30 years, they'll still operate quite efficiently. At that point, maybe they can refurbish them, or maybe there's technology that can, keep them going. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to kind of talk about the debenture, like the retroactive funds with the government, do you then lose the credits if you?
You do. Those
even
revert back
retroactively?
Yeah, so basically the Alberta government would take those credits and use them for the Alberta government to say they're more net zero than they really are. So they would take those credits and they would use them for their benefit. So that's the trade-off you have.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Mr. Chair?
So if I could just ask Blake to explain what net zero is.
Sure.
To me, it was hard to understand, but Blake has a good understanding of it.
I have my own understanding of it. So the town of Raymond considers themselves net zero right now. Basically, they produce more electricity than they consume at all their facilities. So they're pushing more energy out to the grid than they're actually pulling. So they consider themselves net zero. They still consume at all their facilities, but they have the infrastructure to produce more than they consume. So.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen? Councillor Sorensen? Councillor Sorensen, you go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering, so actually, the previous council approved, approximately half of this, and so because of the, grant that's no longer available, then they're asking for, an additional $850 from council, and so I'm just, questioning whether we have this other than just getting it from another debenture.
All right, thank you. That'd be more of a question for Mr. Orwa, possibly, or
Your worship? Your worship?
Mr. Chair? Yes.
When we first looked at this project, it was approximately $2 million. Yeah. So the debenture still was going to be about 1.4 to 1.5. We knew that. And we're hoping for about $500,000 to $600,000 in grants. But because the project came in such less value, like 1.4 million, we actually don't need that grant. And we needed that grant to break even for our debenture, and that's what our goal was. So it doesn't really cost town money over that 15 years.
That's right.
And that's what the grant would have applied for. Now, we really don't need that grant because the full cost of the debenture will be carried out through what we gain back. We should point out that Blake's estimates are very conservative. We know electrical rates are going to go up, so there could be additional revenue.
That's right.
All right, thank you.
I just have one more question.
Sure.
Like when it would be shovel ready.
The project itself, so the project timeline right now would be construction start date of April 14th, commercial operation August 26th, substantial completion September 20th, and final completion October 4th, all of this year.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brown?
But we still want that grant.
Let us come back so we can explain the carbon tax credits and what the grant actually means. Okay, so there's a big difference, and you're actually you want to retain those carbon tax credits over time in the next 30 years because the federal government's going to keep taxing you.
Absolutely,
But
they're
we can have that
important.
discussion.
The tax credits are important. They're kind of a made-up figure that are trading.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
No, it makes sense to keep the carbon tax credits for sure.
For sure. And if the grant stream does reopen, I can go to Gary and we can bring that decision to council to make ultimately.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very impressed with the presentation, sir, and Gary's input also, and I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right, go ahead.
And Mr. Orva too, of course, always. Council awards the Wastewater Lagoon Solar Generation Project with MI Energy Inc. in the amount of $1,398,870, excluding GST, with funds to come from the Energy Efficiency Fund capital reserves for the amount of $143,000, and further direct administration to acquire a 15-year debenture not exceeding $1,385,870.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councilor Brune?
Can I just ask, how much money do we have left in our emergency or energy efficient fund? Are we using it all with this, or is there still some reserve there?
I think this might use pretty much a good chunk of it. We'll just be left with very little.
Okay, thank you. I'm in favor, of course.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. On to item 7.2, 2022 annual asphalt patching. Mr. Tebow.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask for a 5-minute recess? We're having some streaming troubles with sound, and we need to restart the go-to meeting and ask that Councillor Sorensen and Rudd reconnect to us.
All right, so they got to get offline and get back online.
We do. We have to turn it off and then turn it back on to fix
All
the
right. Yeah,
volume
motion
problem.
for a 5-minute recess, please. Motion on the table. All in favor?
How about a 6-minute?
Okay. All in favor? Yes, you just have to get back offline and then reconnect in the next 5 or 10 minutes. I think it should work. Councilor Rudd, did you hear all that also? He's muted. Okay, all right, yes, carried. All right, thank you. All right, thank you. You just have to get offline for a few minutes. All right, if we can reconvene the meeting, please. Councillor Sorensen, Councillor Rudd, we get you both back.
Yeah, much better.
That's much better, yes, absolutely. Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, that really sounds good.
Oh, there we go. That's great. Okay. Back to item 7.2, 2022 annual asphalt patching. Mr. Thibault?
Raman will be up to give you a presentation and answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Raman?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
I'm presenting 2022 Annual Asphalt Patching RFP Award. This is part of annual asphalt patching for utility replacement. The RFP closed Thursday, February 10th, 2022, and we had 6 submissions from the RFP. The evaluation team reviewed all the submission and evaluated and recommended on February 11, 2022. The evaluation was based on the following: the bid price, project understanding, experience, project team, references, and the chart below, it shows the vendors and their rankings. Based on the evaluation that the administration did, we recommend that the annual asphalt patching be awarded to Tallstrip Construction at the price of $36.48 per square meter, excluding GST. I have the following chart under that. Shows the amount we have done in the past years. Does anybody have any question?
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Raman, do you recall the per meter cost last year? What was it, please?
On asphalt,
That's correct, sir.
the per meter, I can't recall,
Hey,
sorry.
remember, Your Worship, I think it was about $36, so it's just a slight increase this year.
So, thank you. That's all I need to know.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean?
Who has done it in the past for us?
Last year was Fenco. The year before that, I believe it was Tallstrip, and again back to Fenco, McNally, all different contractor, Brooks Asphalt.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Brown?
No questions, Mr. Mayor, but I'll make the motion that council awards the 2022 annual asphalt patching RFP to Tallstrip Construction, Inc. for the combined amount of $36.48 per square meter, exclusive of GST, with expenses to be taken from the 2022 operating budget.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor McLean?
Sorry, I have another question. Is there any insurance on what they do? Like, if they don't do a crappy, or if they do a crappy job, because I feel like right now, a lot of our roads are like this, And so, it's like patchwork here, patchwork there, and sometimes you're going like this. And I understand it's really hard to get old road to match with new road, but I'm just wondering if there is like any insurance based on their work.
Of course, there is insurance, and again, we mostly work with these different outfits, and we know their reputation, and we have worked with them in the past quite a bit. But then you have to realize these are asphalt patching. So whenever they replace a utility, sewer line, water line, so on and so forth, this is that portion that it's for replacement. But we do get tests, and we test the material.
All right, thank you. For Councillor McLean, I think just Mr. Shearer and Raman, I think, can also attest to that what you're referring to is the frost heaving, basically what goes on this time of year, right? And that settles down, right, Mr. Shearer?
You're exactly right.
After
It'll settle
time.
down come spring.
Yeah.
But there is a 2-year warranty period for all asphalt that they have to come back and replace if it falls apart or we have defects within the asphalt.
All right, thank you. All right, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
In favor.
All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. On to item 7.3, Police Station HVAC replacement. Mr. Tebow.
As described in policy, there was an emergency purchase that the CEO made. It was back in December when it was the coldest, I believe, and police station was without, and we couldn't have them without. So the invoice made its way in, and this is just me reporting out on that purchase.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising?
I'd just be prepared to make a motion.
All right, you go ahead. Councillor Sorensen.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I would like to make a motion that council accepts the CAO purchasing this emergency expense to the sum of $12,379.50, inclusive of GST, with funds to be transferred from the capital reserves.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Firth, you have a question also? All right, thought so. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
In favor?
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7.4, 2021 operating budget transfer. Mr. Tebow.
Mr. Moneyman Orwar will come and give us the presentation. Any questions can be directed there. Mr. Beckering.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roa.
Thank you very much again, members of council. Now, due to the disruption in the supply chain all over the world, there are some items that were ordered in 2021 and have not been received up to now. And these items will be received in 2022, but the problem is the funds were budgeted in 2021. So the funds are there, and we're just requesting council to move these funds to the operating reserves to be used in 2022.
All right.
And I do have the list of those items in front of you that came from different departments.
All right, thank you. Fairly straightforward. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council approves the transfer of $34,706 from the 2021 operating budget to operating reserves to be used in 2022.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
In favor.
All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 7.5, information for council. Mr. Tebow.
So there is no resolutions required for this, but this information for council is from the previous traffic committee meeting that was held.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor McLean?
I just noticed that a part of the hold on a second. Parking spots in the rear of the building, like they are the butcher place. They have not been given alley access or parking spots in the rear of the building. Do you know why they haven't been given access? Because it looks like from the view of the picture, it looks like there is quite a bit of parking space behind their building, behind the new butcher shop. And so I was just wondering why they don't have that access.
Councilor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can answer that. The landlord of the building is renting the building, but is not willing to give access to the parking space behind.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Right, someone prepared to make that motion?
I can make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, you go right ahead.
Make a motion the council accepts the material received in this agenda item as information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7.6, department reports. I will go through those individually. If you got any questions on any particular report, just please stop me and ask accordingly. Starting off with Recreation Department reports. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if the swim lesson schedule would be made available a little more easier or friendly, or in, I don't know, in a more friendly manner. Because, I don't know, for me, we weren't sure if there was going to be a swim lesson because of the school break. And I know after I did some digging, it said when you like go and register them, it was like excluding that day. But I just had to go and like do a lot of digging to find that when you go and register, like all of the swim lessons information is there, and it will say like excluding that day. But then, I don't know, for us, we were just trying to find it, and then it was like, we were pressured for time. It was my own fault for not looking ahead of time, but I was just wondering if we could somehow make that available a little bit easier in a more friendly way. Thanks.
All right, can somebody speak to that, Mr. Tebow?
I would say that at this point, this report's for information, perhaps in the standing items, if you wanted to direct the administration to do something in that regard. And then I'm going to guess that we could take that away and have a look.
All right. You good with that?
Yep.
Councillor McLean, you bet. All right, next is Engineering and Public Works report. Public Works Treatment Facilities report. Finance Department report. Councillor McLean?
Sorry, I have another question. The annual computer replacement, how many do we replace each year? I'm just wondering.
All right, who can speak to that?
We'll get Al, since he's here, to speak to that.
All right, thanks, Al.
Through your worship. It depends on the lifespan of each computer, so approximately a third of the equipment we have. So every year we estimate the lifespan for our computers, and it's not just computers, firewalls, switches, printers, everything that gets plugged into the wall.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next is Fire Department reports.
Can I just mention something, Mr. Mayor?
Sure, you bet. Councillor Sarncy, go ahead.
I was just wondering how the fire department can perhaps share with the community the program of smoke alarm installation and exchanges. And maybe they've done this in the past, but I'm just not aware of it.
All right, thank you. Chief Munson, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead, sir, if you can.
I thought I was going to get off a whole night without this. Thank you for the question, much appreciated. So the smoke alarm project is put to the community through donors within the community. The calendars put that money together, local businesses put that money together, and it's purchased the smoke alarms then to give back out to the people that are in need or can't afford to put them into their homes. So they're free, and they are as brochures throughout the different portions of the community. You can get them at the fire hall, and we can even update the report with more information on it for upcoming months, but these are free smoke alarms that the community can get for those that are in need of them.
Thank you for the information.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and now the chief has left the podium there. I just wanted to say great job on the work done on the curling bond spill there. I've heard nothing but great things, and it sounded like it was a huge success, and congratulations to everyone who put that on. It's good.
Absolutely, thank you.
I'm not sure who came in 5th place.
All right, Plan and Economic Development report, CAO Department report, Human Resources report, and Administrative Services report. No further questions. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the department reports for information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
In favor?
Great, carried unanimously. Thank you. On to Mayor and council reports, item 7.7. Councillor Rudd, if we could start with you, please.
Okay, nothing to report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I've just been attending meetings as assigned and, participating as assigned, doing the work that's required.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So probably the community noticed that I missed last meeting and I was on a personal vacation. So that's why I didn't attend. And I've just been attending meetings as required and no information to report.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended all meetings as required to. I did miss one I was unable to make with the Municipal Planning Commission, Highway 3 executive meetings and annual meeting there, monthly meeting I attended. Everything seems on track with the Highway 3. We're looking forward to this year seeing shovels in the ground.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have attended all meetings that I was required to attend, as well as the Tabor Arts and Crafts Society's annual general meeting.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report that's out of the ordinary. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also attended all meetings as required and also the media training meeting and the regional council meeting that we had and the emergency management training. So, but nothing to report.
All right, that doesn't sound like nothing, but but all right, thank you. And for myself, I attended a variety of meetings, dealt with a number of document requirements, contracts, etc. Also attended the 4-H speak-offs as a judge for that event, the Tabor Christian School. This year was a lot of fun and a great group of kids there. Also helped kick off the Tabor Food Bank Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser, as well as the Green Shirt Day presentations for organ donor awareness that took place at the Civic Center on the weekend as well. So with that, that would be my report. So somebody prepare to make a motion in that regard. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the mayor and council reports for information.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to 7.8, standing item, council requests. Councillor McLean, did you want to add that one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move that administration directs, I don't know which department it is, Parks and Recreation, I guess, to make swim lessons schedule more easily available to us general public. Thank you.
More equally available, did you say? More easily available. Okay, all right. That's good. They'll give you enough information. I know you know the regular gist that she's looking for. Was that?
Yep.
Cover the base.
Carrie gave me the wink. We're good.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
In favor.
All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. Any other standing item council requests? Oh. Was somebody else trying to chime in? Was that Councillor Rudd or Councillor Sorensen?
No, I have nothing, Mr. Mayor, but I did appreciate the work that IT did on on our previous request regarding the broadcast. Thank you, and appreciate what they did. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Councillor McLean?
I was just wondering, when businesses renew their licenses, you know how we sent out that question and answer thing, or like their little 2-question thing? Is there a better way to get more of a response in some way? I don't know, I'm not trying to direct administration necessarily, but I just felt like this last time when we were asking them about the sidewalks, we got little response. And so I was just wondering if there is a better way, like when they have to go to renew their business licenses, is there a way that we can maybe get more involvement? in those kinds of things?
You know what, I don't mind chiming in on this one. I think it's typical, is it not? We're getting about 10%, right, on average for any survey done. So I don't know if there is any answer for that, other than that's pretty consistent with whenever we do a survey of any kind. That's you might get the 10% range, and that's about it. So it's not for lack of trying. Mr. Tebow.
In the case of business licenses, the only thing I could think of is making some sort of a mandatory thing when they have to buy their business license, but I don't believe that people will respond well to that. So what we do typically see is exactly what Mr. Mayor said, 10 to 15%, and that's just typical involvement.
Right. All right. Perfect. Thank you. Any other standing item council requests whatsoever? All right. No other motions required in that regard. Okay. With that, next is our delegations for 5 o'clock. MLA Grant Hunter. If I could just ask for a recess to 5 o'clock to reconvene for our delegation. Councilor Firth.
I can make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
All right. Thank you. Carried unanimously.
we got you people.
Yeah, we're live again, Jordan. Jordan, we're live though. Councillor Sorensen, Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, I'm here.
Present.
All right, thank you. If we can reconvene the meeting then, please. And on to item number 8, delegations, item 8.1. Delegation, Mr. Grant Hunter or MLA? Mr. Tebow.
Mr. Hunter's here to present. There was a few questions that was sent his way. Initially, this was a meet and greet that was sort of discussed way back in it might have been December or October even, but we had our organizational meeting, so things were rescheduled, and Mr. Hunter is here.
All right, thank you. And welcome, Mr. Grant Hunter.
It's good to be here. For those who have known me, I'd like to try to get around after each of the elections and to chat with the new councillors. We have three new councillors here, right?
That's correct. Yep.
And so welcome. It's good to meet you, Monica. And then we got Elf. I know Elf and Joanne quite well for many
And they're
years.
online with us now.
Right.
Yep.
So anyways, I just wanted to come and introduce myself to the new councillors and then to give you kind of a state of the union about what's happening. So we're back in session now. We started a week ago. We did a speech from the throne, and that basically just set out what we're going to be doing for the last year of our mandate. And the three main things that we're going to be focusing on are going to be increasing the healthcare system to be able to make it more robust and more able to deal with future possible issues with possible pandemic, variations to what we've had with the COVID. These are the types of things that we have to be able to address. We cannot continue to afford to shut things down. People's mental health is at an all-time low. People want to be able to get back to see their kids at hockey and basketball games, and they need to get back to some normal. So the key here is to be able to actually ramp up the ICU capabilities, and then also to make sure that we have the capabilities to be able to deal with future pandemic issues such as this one has actually been killing older people. And because of that, we want to make sure that we have strategies that will protect our elderly. And so these are things that we've kind of been trying to learn over the last couple of years, and we hope to be able to address these concerns with this budget. So you're going to have to throw some money at it. We're going to have to do some cross-training with our nurses and our practitioners, healthcare practitioners. When you have a system that can actually ramp up in ICU capacity to 700, but it normally sits at around 150 ICU beds. That is not easy to do, and I think every jurisdiction in the world has shown that that is very, very difficult to do. But the ones who have done it very effectively, those ones have been able to see the least amount of disruption to their economies and to the mental health of their workers. And so we're doing some work right now with Alberta Health Services to be able to make sure that they've got that cross training and to make sure that they have the ability to deal with people when they get COVID. So whatever strain they get, there are things that you can do to be able to mitigate how severe it gets with our seniors and with the immunocompromised. And we've learned some stuff over the last 2 years. And so and this is actually not just so much we have learned it, but all over the world they've had to start trying to figure this stuff out. There's a thing called the Texas Protocol that Florida has implemented under Ron DeSantis that has been very successful. As you know, they have the second highest or second oldest population in North America. We have like the second youngest population in North America. And so what we've learned from what they're doing down there is that if you can catch it fast enough and be able to start treating them quickly, within 1 to 4 days, they've shown that you can actually decrease the amount of people going to ICUs by up to 99%. So that is a very successful program that we've started to try to implement some of those best practices up here. So when it comes to dealing with COVID, that's something that I think will not be going away. It's how we deal with it. It's going to be able to determine our go-forward path. And I think that this budget will certainly address that. The second thing that this budget is doing is it's carrying on with the fiscal management of our province. As you know, we inherited a structural deficit of about $10 billion per year, which is difficult when you had zero debt in 2015, and now we're almost $100 billion of debt. That debt is going to be, unfortunately, borne by our children and grandchildren. Nobody, I think, wants to have that happen, and so we want to make sure that we're fiscally careful with Alberta's taxpayers' dollars, and so we're going to carry on with what we've been doing. As you've probably heard, we presented a balanced budget. That is a balanced budget. Some people would say it's because of our royalties we'll be receiving from non-renewable resources. I will admit that certainly helped. You know, when you've got WTI that's where it's at, it really does help our bottom line. But it also is a result, if you take a look at what we've done, it's also a result of just being very careful to be able to right-size the size of government. And we've tried to keep growth of government low. So I'll give you an example. I guess comparables as we saw it, there was about a 4% increase per year under the NDP each year. And it was really unsustainable. It was going to, what it would do is it would affect our ability to provide these important healthcare and education, secondary, post-secondary education programs that we have, wraparound services, social services that we have. And so we recognized that we needed to change that and change that trajectory. We've done that over the last 3 years. We've shown that we can do that. And this last year, we're going to try to be able to maintain that. We have about a $500 million cushion with our budget, I guess, is the best way to put it. We put some money in for COVID response as well. We know, again, COVID's not going away. So we put some money in for that. And we think that this is a budget that is certainly defensible. As Minister Taves, the Treasury Board and Finance Minister, would say, it's plausible to be able to actually have this budget work in the next 22, 23 years. I wanted to go through really quickly with you what's going on with the MSI. The mayor has spoken with me about this issue, and I wanted to make sure that I address this issue with you. So with MSI, there's two parts to the formula. The first is the MSI formula itself, and then there's the basic municipal transportation grant. And that basic municipal transportation grant is not going to be changing. It's, I think, $60 per capita. And so that will continue on. And it's kind of frozen at the 2021 numbers. But the MSI number is actually, it was in budget 2021, it was announced that the MSI would decrease by 25%. So I know nobody was happy about that, but this was, again, decisions that were made by the government. But when COVID hit, we made a choice in Treasury Board, as you know, I'm a member of the Treasury Board. We made a choice that we were going to front-end load some money to municipalities so that they had the ability to do what we could not do, which is counter-cyclical spending. So when you go into a dip, and that's what we had oil, we were giving our oil away. In fact, we were paying people to take our oil for a certain period of time in 2021. So we said, there's two options we have. We knew that every jurisdiction in the world was going to be doing counter-cyclical spending, which basically means that when you go into a dip, you're going to try to spend your way out a bit. And so we did that, but we had two options. One, we could set up a new program, which would be, everybody would have to figure out how to use that program. And I argued against that. I said, we already have MSI. MSI is a great program, but let's add money to that. And so we added $500 million to MSI. And that's what was front-end loaded to our municipalities. So now, when I said front-end loaded, it means that if you take an average over the 3 years, and the average is $722 million, we took the $500 million from the last 2 years, and we put it up in the first year. So rather than getting the $722 million, you got $1.196 billion. And we said this specifically to mayors and reeves and councils. Remember that this money is front-end loaded. You use it to get people working and get your projects going. But remember that in the last 2 years, it's going to be lower. And so what it really comes out to the last 2 years is about 40.6% of the amount that you would normally be getting. 40.6% of 2021 numbers. Which that 1.196 billion is not what we were supposed to be getting in 2021. It was supposed to be the 722 million. So it's not actually almost a 60% decrease. It's a 60% decrease from what you actually got in 2021. That sounds a lot more complicated than I probably needed to make it. If you want more questions about that, we'll have some time right at the end. But that is the best way to be able to describe what happened with the MSI. And so for those who are concerned or questioning about what your number should be, the number that has been given to us is $851,145 in MSI funding, capital funding, and then there's an extra amount for the BMTG. I know that the other question that was asked was about the policing, the policing model that is being studied right now. Now, one of the questions that has come up to us on a regular basis is, why are we actually going to be paying more for an Alberta police force? And municipalities will always ask the question, why will we be paying more for that? And so there was a report that was done. Actually, there was 3 reports that were done by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And the first one that was done, there were some questions that were asked. The second one was done, some more questions by RMA and AUMA and different stakeholders. This is a final report. I highly recommend it's on the website. If you guys want to go onto the government website, you can actually see it there. But I'm just going to turn to have you just present to you what it says on page 80, which I think addresses the concerns that I've heard from municipalities. So basically it does a cost-benefit analysis of the current state of affairs, and the cost to the current model for RCMP contract services is $672 million. And then there is a sheriff's part, which is $41 million. But what happened was the federal government, actually it was Treasury Board and the federal government that actually went into negotiations with the union, and they actually have given them a very sizable increase in their wages. And so that would actually increase an extra $70 million onto that $672 million cost or price tag. And so that has actually been normalized into this cost-benefit analysis, and they've already put that in there. So for people who are concerned about whether or not this has been done right in terms of the numbers, I can tell you that from what I'm seeing here, and what I've just, again, for the 3rd or 4th time, read through this report, the report does specifically address the issue of that increase in the cost of the RCMP. So what is the cost to having an Alberta police force? Which I want to just state right out that we haven't decided whether this is what we want to do or not. This is just being studied at this point. So no decision has been made on this. We're just trying to be able to figure out what is the options that we have. The cost they gave 2 models that they were presenting. The first model is would cost the province $734 million, and the second model would cost $759 million. The total cost, that is what the cost of policing would be in Alberta at an adjusted current model, is $783 million. So that's based upon that increase that the RCMP will be receiving of $70 million, and also taking into consideration the $41 million for the sheriffs. There's also something else that has to be addressed here, and that is that under this agreement, there was $100 million that would have to be back pay made up for by the province and the municipalities. And we have maintained to the federal government that you negotiated without having us or the municipalities at the table. You made a back pay of $100 million that is to be paid, so we shouldn't have to pay for that. And so they say we do, we say we don't. We're still kind of, well, we're fighting about that. So that is the situation with the policing. I have also heard a concern about feedback from municipalities and how they would have local decision-making in terms of the policing. I think that there's certainly an argument to be made that sometimes RCMP is not the only option. Sometimes you just want to have CPO, I think that's the acronym, and that will work specifically for what your needs are. But there's, under the MGA, or I believe it's the MGA, it doesn't allow municipalities to have that option. You have to go with a full-blown RCMP officer. And this is causing some of our municipalities some concern. Now, I know that Tabor has their own police force. But I just wanted to be able to point this out because I think that it's important for everybody who is in rural Alberta will be affected by the decision that the province makes. I just don't want you to think that you guys are going to be bearing the cost for that decision. And I think that I will stop there, Mr. Mayor, and answer any questions, because I know that there was a few questions that were also proposed that I think I could probably go through as well.
All right, yes, there was. Thank you so much. Yes, any questions arising? Councillor Bickering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hunter, for your presentation. Really appreciate it. You mentioned that in the beginning of your presentation, health being critical in the new budget, and I've gone through the new budget and I see that you're going to spend considerable dollars trying to either make it more efficient or improve it or somehow. I'd like to just address one part of it, if I may. The ambulance part of Alberta Health Services. We had a joint meeting with the other councils in the area here the other day, and we talked about it. We had a presentation from the EMT people. There was not many answers except for the fact we're working on it. But give us your slant on that, Brand, would you please?
You bet. So there's been a major increase in call volume, and they haven't been able to identify to us why that is. It could be because of COVID. So that's going to be one issue. We have actually, so AHS has actually increased the amount of EMTs. I think they've added an extra 200 EMTs. There's a bunch of problems that we have. Number one, we've got dispatching that has gone centralized. So it's the dispatching is and I think I was in front of, I think the last council saying, give it a chance, guys. You know, before you say it was bad, give it a chance, see what happens. And I have to say the data shows that it's not working. So we have now we've struck a committee co-chaired by RJ Sigurdsson and Tracy Allard. Tanny Yao, who used to be an EMT, is on there as well, that will be addressing these issues and trying to be able to come up with solutions now. So it could either be moving back to a regional approach. All of these things are on the table now. The other thing is that when they're dispatched to an area, sometimes they'll be stuck there. So they could be dispatched to Lethbridge and be stuck there all day and never come back into the area where they're supposed to be in. And that is a major problem because, as you know, we can have code reds that it's that golden hour. You need to have an emergency medical team there for them. The other thing is that when they get to the hospitals, sometimes they'll wait 14, 16, 18 hours to transfer that patient to ICU. And that's unacceptable. And they'll be stuck there. They are stuck there. They have a responsibility to make sure that that handoff happens before they leave. And so they'll get stuck in there. And so you've got the left arm not knowing what the right arm is doing, and it's not working. So that is what's happening right now. And I could tell you of other things as well. I think that I think the new Minister of Health is actually very willing to try to address these issues. As when I've talked with him, I can tell you, Councillor, he has been very willing to listen and hear, not just have his ideas about what's right and what's wrong. And I think that we're going to see some good things.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hunter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm getting old, so it's very important to me. Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hunter, for coming and giving us your presentation. It's a tough thing that everyone's facing right now is the cost of energy. That was touched on slightly in the budget for help next year. But is there anything coming this year for the high cost of energy now at the housing? Or,
well, it's October, November. We were open. I think it said November of this year. Well, I shouldn't say this year, like fiscal year. Like that's what that means this year, right? So fiscal year starts April 1st. So when they say next year, it means as in the fiscal year. So that would actually start in 2022, either November or October.
Yeah, so there's no relief for the current cost of energy right now for...
No, so they have, it's a perfect storm going on right now, Councillor Bruin. You've got a whole bunch of, well, so all over the world, everybody's trying to green their electrical grid and utilities. And so I think everybody's been tripping over themselves to try to be able to move it faster. The NDP brought it in, they changed the way that the power purchase agreements were done. They created a law that actually basically put Albertans on the hook for about a little over $1 billion. Now you'll see that on your rate rider. And you'll see that for the next 10 years, that we'll have to be paying off that loss. But the NDP brought in a bill that basically created what's called the Enron Clause, and that made it so that companies could actually pass, and that's what they call it. It's actually a name for it. They call it the Enron Clause. So they could actually pass back their power purchase agreements that because of this law is going to make it not worthwhile or not profitable. And so that's why we lost so much money off of that. We made a big deal of it, but the media didn't want to cover it. So we have to pay for that. The other thing is that as they transition from coal to natural gas, they actually took all of those companies, those retail providers of electricity, and they transitioned them faster than what they were supposed to. And because of that, there was a couple of these power plants that went off sooner than they were supposed to. And so what happened is it decreased the supply. The demand was still there. You decrease the supply, they're going to knock up the equilibrium price. And that's what we saw happen this year. Now, from what I understand from Dale Nally, who's the minister for that utilities, he's told me that the last one is off now and it's coming back on. So it will be transitioned completely from coal to natural gas. So that was the one issue. The other thing to think about is, and I tried to say this a long time ago, the truth is that when you transition from coal to natural gas, it sounds great, but you know that you go from 1.5 cents per gigajoule or kilowatt hour to 3 cents per kilowatt hour, which is natural gas. Now, that's a 100% increase in cost, input cost. Plus, you have to realize that when you are going to be adding so much more, we have lots of natural gas here, but we don't have it already. And so they moved it so quickly that if you take a look at your bill right now, the cost of natural gas isn't actually at 3 cents a kilowatt hour or a gigajoule. It's actually at 4.6 to 4.9. That's the flow rate. And so we've seen a major, major increase in the cost of utilities because I think of this tripping over ourselves to be able to green the grid.
Yes, thank you. And on top of that, we have the carbon tax.
And actually, thank you. because the carbon tax on April the 1st will be going up to $50. So we'll be going from $40 to $50. They want it to go up to $170 per ton. So, and they want to do that in another 8 years. The federal government wants that. I am 100% opposed to that. I think that's going to put businesses and especially our fixed income homeowners in real trouble. Can you imagine going from $50 to $170? Right now we're at 40, and in a little over a month we're going to be going to $50. So we saw year over year. I know because I looked at my utility bill as well, and my carbon tax just year over year doubled. It doubled. It went from $30 to $60 from January to January.
And I hope that we're still fighting the battle to try to eliminate that.
We lost in court. We took it to the Supreme Court. We lost.
Let's not give up.
We won here, but we lost in the Supreme Court. I'm hoping that Trudeau gets kicked out before we go to 170.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Talking about healthcare, in the budget, $1.8 billion is going to Red Deer Hospital. And I'm wondering about Tabor Hospital. I know that about, what was it, $100 million was going to other hospitals, but I was just wondering, like the Tabor Hospital, there is money sitting there to update the maternity wards, but the government doesn't want to because of structural things that need to be updated. And so I'm wondering if there can be, like, what's the plan for, like, you know, Lethbridge and Tabor's hospitals and stuff like that down here. You know, I know that they're hoping that Red Deer's hospital will then take some ease off of Edmonton and Calgary, but that's just like a lot of money put in one basket. And so I'm wondering if we can like pull some of that down south potentially.
In terms of, so good question. In terms of the Red Deer Hospital at 1.8 billion, that is a massive amount of money, as you just stated. But Red Deer has been saying they've been kind of forgotten for decades, and it's time for them to get their due. So that was a capital project. What you're talking about is more of like a maintenance renewal projects, which we still have money in the pot for that. And I don't know where Tabor's at in terms of being able to have that expansion or that maternity center being fixed.
Well, in Tabor, they've raised the money to update the suites, and the money's just sitting there waiting to be used. But Alberta Health Services, or I don't know, the government, I'm not sure who has said no, because there's structural things that need to change, which isn't on the municipal, like isn't on the local people, that's on whoever's owning the building, which is Alberta Health Services or Alberta Health. And so Alberta Health is then saying, well, these things need to be changed. We want the roof, we want the structural, you know, the electrical, it's all old. The hospital is very old. There hasn't been many updates to it. Its maternity suite is like original to the building, basically. And so we raised all the money to do the internal work to get a new maternity suite, but it hasn't been used. It's just sitting there waiting, kind of thing.
Okay. So. Listen, can we maybe take that offline? I mean, I would like to know more information about that. I don't know the situation you're talking about, but you please give my office a call and we can chat on the phone, or you can come and see me in my office, or I can come and see you.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Mr. Grant Hunter, for your presentation. I know you have a bit of a timeline here, so we're trying to get you underway here.
Thank you.
So you can get your
I
next
have
appointment.
one question.
Councillor Sorensen?
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry, Mr. Hunter. I was just wondering, loans for local authorities. The line item in the budget, I think, is supposed to maybe triple over the next 3 years as income. I was wondering if interest rates are going to increase for municipalities and we will not be able to access low interest loans.
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, interest rates are gonna go up for sure, so I just don't know how to answer your question. So,
Yep, that's fair. I kind of threw it at you.
no, and I'm just trying to think the question through, but where do you guys get your loans from then?
Well, we were doing the
Treasury Board and
debentures.
Finance, right? Okay. So if our prime lending rate goes up, then obviously they'll be passed on.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow?
I was just going to mention that there was questions from folks online. We do have a question that was sent to the office from Councillor Rudd. We have it here. I don't know if you actually had the question come your way. You were prepared from Councillor Rudd?
I just saw all the questions, didn't say who it was from. Which one are you talking about?
Just let me see if I can read this here for you. My eyes aren't that great. Councillor Rudd asked, in light of our weakening federal leadership, would the UCP consider taking steps similar to a resolution passed by Premier Moe of Saskatchewan at the recent AGM to seek greater provincial autonomy on matters that are of importance to Albertans, such as energy, agriculture, transportation, and other economic drivers? So I don't know if you actually understand the question.
I do actually understand. I did read that article. I think Scott Moe brings up a good point, which is that there are decisions that are being made federally that actually have affected us provincially. There is some of the federal guys are actually trying to do things that are directly provincial jurisdiction, and so they're trying to take over some of our provincial jurisdiction. I think that there's an argument for trying to be able to have more autonomy. I believe that I like being Canadian. I'm happy to be Canadian. Canada's been great to me, but I think that certainly when you have overreach, you're supposed to have the courts to be able to help work that through. But as we saw with the carbon tax, the classic example, we had a very good argument that that this is infringing upon provincial jurisdiction, and yet we lost in the courts on that. We lost in the Supreme Court on that. So I'm hopeful that as we try to be able to bring in more of an Alberta solution to issues, that we don't have to have some of these. I think some of these very, very difficult policies that are coming down from the federal government, i.e. the carbon tax. I honestly can tell you, I've talked to Lantic and I've talked to different companies that are like LandWest, and they know full well they don't have a carbon tax down south of the border. And, if it gets to the point where they don't have a competitive advantage up here, they'll leave. We'll lose businesses, we'll lose jobs. I don't want to see that happen. I want to see it grow here. That's what, we've just been investing a massive amount of money in this area, $150 million for the twinning between Taber and Burdett. The expansion of the Chin Reservoir, 60,000 irrigated acres and an extra 200,000 irrigated acres that haven't been announced yet. Well, I've got big plans for between Taber and Medicine Hat for an agri-food processing corridor. And we've got lots of things that have to happen. I don't want the federal government to be able to go in and mess that up. We want this to grow and prosper, this area to do very well, and I think it will. But those types of policies, like $170 carbon tax, it'd be devastating to agri-food processing, which is very, it needs to have low input costs. So I'm hopeful that the federal government is changed out and that we can get some more common sense in there. But time will tell. We'll see.
All right, again, thank you so much, Mr. MLA Grant Hunter. I appreciate your time and all your efforts there, and don't want to let you get held up for your next appointment there. So,
thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, someone make a motion, accept that for information purposes. Councillor Brown.
I can make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
That we accept MLA Mr. Grant Hunter's report for information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimous. Thank you. See you again. All right, thank you. We are on to media inquiries. Any media inquiries whatsoever?
No media inquiries came our way.
All right. With that, I'd ask for a motion to move into closed session then, please. Councillor Bruin,
I make the motion, we move into closed session.
motion on the table. All in favor? Just a motion to move into open session, please.
We move into open session.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
Carried unanimously, thank you. All right.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion that the next motion be recorded as a vote?
Actually, just a request is all you have to do, and I would ask, thank you, I would ask our administrators to formally record the vote for any motion that may come out in open session. All right, Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that council approves the amended 2022 operating budget in the amount of $91,077.06 as discussed in closed session.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I oppose.
Opposed?
Yes, I do.
Opposed? Myself and Councillor Sorensen opposed.
How about Alf? Is he out?
I believe he
In favor.
indicated.
In favor.
Yes. All right, thank you. Motion carried. And a motion to close the meeting, please. Councillor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that we close. the meeting.
All right, motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried now.
Or, sorry, in favor.
Thank you.
I want it to be longer, please.